Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back. Please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe. We have no guests today, so instead we're doing another very off-the-cuff videos where we discuss the issue of where ideological atheists lie to you, and it's called The Atheists Always Lie. This is number 3, where we will be talking about where atheists lie in physics, biochemistry, and evolution. Now, again, I'm going to give the disclaimer. The claim atheists always lie is rhetoric, of course, and humor. It is also, though, in this case, very accurate, at least toward that type of atheist who is very intensely ideological and constantly makes what we would call atheist faith claims. You know, the claim that there's no evidence for God, that science has proven we have no need for God, etc. And those are atheist faith claims, and they're very ideological. In fact, there's no science in those statements. They're not even factual. In reality, as we have seen with multiple interviews and the other things we've done on escaping atheism, there's nothing incompatible with most religious belief, including Christian, but also other big religions, including Hinduism and all those. There's no actual conflict except occasionally over moral issues. As I will note here too, atheists, the ideological atheists, and I'm not going to make a distinction anymore. I mean the ideologues in the organized groups and the ones who have the events, the ones who publish the atheist books, the ones who preach atheism from within the classroom at colleges and increasingly through, primary and secondary, like high school and stuff in the U.S. and especially in Canada. They do preach atheism, these strange beliefs that belief in God is against science, and that Christianity is the enemy of science, or religion is the enemy of science. If you actually look here, for example, it's less than 10 years. It's almost 10 years old, but it's as good as any data you'll see today. Pew Research, as many others, have shown that a majority of scientists worldwide are not atheist. And one of the interesting things is that you will find that ideological atheists, in the Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Penn Jillette, Bill Maher, Matt Mould, as well as a lot of them in academia, will try to cite a study from the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, PNAS, which is a group of esteemed and distinguished scientists in the United States. And back in the early 90s, they had a little informal survey showing something like 97% of them were atheist. However, there's several problems with that. One thing you'll notice, for example, even if you go online and start searching for PNAS survey most members atheist or whatever, you find it's references to it, but actually getting the original source online is nearly impossible. There's reference to it in Wikipedia. You find references to it in all sorts of other atheist websites. But that PNAS survey showing that 93% of members of the National Academy of Sciences were atheists, it was admitted even by those who did that survey and published it that was not a scientific survey. No one's ever tried to replicate it either. And you can't even run it down to cross-check it. If you do, you'll find out that it's a garbage survey, very informally done, with no rigorous scientific or proper survey methodologies at all. It was intensely ideological. And at this point, by the way, if you heard about that PNAS survey and you got it from a known atheist source, why did you not get skeptical and go, is that all the evidence there is? Now, science, survey after survey shows that scientists are overwhelmingly spiritual. That atheists are somewhat overrepresented among them, significantly overrepresented among scientists. But you know what else? Autistics are also overrepresented among scientists. And autistics are more likely to be atheists. They just are. Most autistics are not atheists, but autistics are more likely. I think it's because they're natural-born materialists and they need a little help breaking out of materialist silliness. But beyond that, even today in the top tiers, as it says here on Quora, and many other sources can affirm this very easily, the vast majority of Nobel laureates in physics, the big hard scientific field that everybody loves so much, more than 65% of Nobel laureates in physics alive today are Christian. The believing Jews and some other religions are also well represented. Atheists are a distinct minority among them. So for all of those of you who talk about Stephen Hawking as if he's the most brilliant man alive, no, he's not. He's not even a Nobel laureate. He is a peer to these people. Maybe he has won. I may have forgotten. I don't think he's won a Nobel Prize yet, though. In reality, Stephen Hawking is brilliant, but he's not the most brilliant physicist alive. That's mostly publicity stuff. He's an interesting fellow, though. Most Nobel laureates in physics are Christians, and the rest, the majority are even an even bigger majority are some kind of non-atheist. Now, this actually matters. Although again, we have another survey, just so you know, on phys.org. You want to check that one out too. Again, no, not all scientists are atheists, not even a majority. By the way, even in China, where ideological atheism is rigorously enforced in the schools and the political system, scientists in China are more likely to be religious than not religious. So even where atheism is enforced and belief in God and the religious and the spiritual is strongly frowned on, a majority of scientists wind up being spiritual. You know why, guys? Because there's evidence, and there's always been evidence that the supernatural is real, that the spiritual matters, and yes, by the way, that there is a God. The Christian God, that's another conversation. But that there's a God at all, that there's a spiritual realm at all, that the supernatural exists at all, there's all kinds of rational evidence for that. Furthermore, what atheists will like to do at this point is sort of dodge and say, well, yes, but you know, maybe a majority of these Nobel laureates in physics, the hardest of all the scientists, maybe the majority of them maybe a clear, overwhelming majority of them are spiritual, but that had nothing to do with their work. And that, again, is complete garbage. I can give you that garbage by one example. Now, just don't let the atheists be dishonest and say this is the only example there is, because there's more than one example. But still, here is one example. Georges LeMaitre, who was the cosmologist and priest who gave us the Big Bang Theory based on Einstein's work. And Einstein was not an atheist either, by the way. He specifically rejected it. And while he did not believe in organized religion, he was actually very kind to and grateful to the Catholic Church. And he really got along very well with Georges LeMaitre. Okay? And what Georges LeMaitre, when he formulated the Big Bang, using the book of Genesis, he concluded that the universe had to have a beginning. And so he began looking for evidence of the beginning of the universe in cosmology. And he was using the concept called the prime mover, which was from Aristotle. Aristotle's base idea of God was as the prime mover. And so what theoretical physicists like him do will say things like, okay, if the prime mover does X, Y, and Z, how did he do it? And they start theorizing out how it happened. Newton found the idea useful too. So did countless other physicists. The prime mover, the uncaused cause. Other physicists believed in it too. Heisenberg, not a Christian, not even a believing Jew, believed in it. All the big quantum physics people believed in it. And it turns out beyond the Big Bang Theory, which by the way, the Big Bang Theory is evidence for God. Sorry if you thought otherwise, but it is evidence for God. In fact, the guy who formulated was looking for it. I mean, he himself would say that the Big Bang is not proof for God, but that's in the sense that nothing's going to be proof to the denier. And also, he was not an egotist. He knew one thing that a lot of atheists do not. He knew that his Big Bang Theory might not be correct. He was an honest man too. He knew he might be wrong, and he knew Einstein might be wrong. Einstein knew Einstein might be wrong. Atheists today act as if the people who formulated these scientific theories were infallible and could not be wrong, but they were men who knew they could be wrong about all of it. This is why, even though I don't like creationism per se, and I often kind of lock horns with creationists, at the end of the day, I'm honest enough with creationists and other people like them to say, listen, we don't know everything. Maybe we're the wrong ones and you're the right ones. Atheist inability to do that is interesting, isn't it? Now, not only do we have evidence from the Big Bang Theory and Einstein's theory of universe of relativity that we have evidence from both those areas of physics, therefore, that something intelligent is continuing to, created and is continuing to operate the universe. If we look at contemporary cosmology, we also have the issue of the cosmological constant. By the way, I've talked to multiple physicists about that. And I've interviewed more than one scientist who've talked to me about that. Here, this video, Cosmological Constant, which I'll give everybody a link to, is Leonard Susskind, the theoretical physicist, giving the brief description of what the cosmological constant is all about. My friend, the astrophysicist Sarah Salviander, says everything he says here is perfectly correct. And it explains how, not just at the point of beginning of the universe, but also ongoing, current, the way the universe continues to operate now can only happen because certain laws of physics, certain numbers and certain variables in physics are fixed and never move. And if they changed even a little bit, the entire universe would dissolve into complete unintelligibility. It would be like pixelated noise on your computer screen, or, you know, static on an old AM radio. It would just, and pure static. The whole universe would collapse into unintelligibility. This, by the way, is where the real, what we call the argument from design originates. A lot of people get distracted with something called intelligent design, which is the Discovery Institute and Michael Behe and those guys. To me, I actually find those people's efforts fascinating, a little strange to me and silly at times, but whatever. I mean, they could be right and I could be wrong. But no, the real argument from design is the whole damn universe looks designed. Everything about the universe, everything, the orderly laws of physics, the operant intelligibility of the universe, the fact that it continues to operate the way it does. You know, here's a little quick lesson on the word creation. Classically, Christians, when they used the term creation, they meant in the current tense. In other words, that God is constantly creating everything, that the universe is in a state of constant creation right now, that everything we see, we call it creation because God's making it all go as it goes. This also, by the way, is why some of us can't stand hyper-obsessing on the point of origins in biology or whatever, because it's an interesting question. But the more interesting question is, to a lot of us, is, you know, why does the universe appear to keep working the way it does? You know, why is steel steel? Why do molecules do that? Why do they keep doing that? Why do quanta, you know, various subatomic quanta do what they do? Why do they keep doing it? Anyway, the cosmological constant is just one area of theoretical physics that, again, militates against the atheist position. For it strongly, overwhelmingly suggests something intelligence put all those rules of operation of the universe into place so everything would be here. Not just life, by the way, but everything. Planets, stars, suns, moons, comets, constellations, galaxies, all of it, including, yes, life, that it's all designed. In fact, speaking from that perspective, while this is cosmology, at the same time, we have quantum physics. And I'll tell you what, if you're not a believer in quantum physics, fine. But what I will say is that according to multiple people I've talked to, quantum physics is in reality the best tested theory in all of science. Evolution is not the best tested theory. I'm not just arguing about evolution. I was saying evolution is actually not the best tested. Quantum physics is. They've just turned in so many phenomenal results testing its assumptions over and over again, that at this point, what I would say to anybody who's doubting quantum physics is, really, the burden of proof is on you. The quantum physics people have bent over backwards to prove just about everything to the satisfaction of the critics. I'm not even saying quantum physics has to be real, but you're wrong to dismiss it. It's perfectly rational to believe in it. It's a wildly successful field of science. And if you check out this video and some of the others, you will find that within quantum physics is something called the digital universe theory. Are we living in a video game? The digital universe theory comes out of quantum physics. And let me tell you something. I've been reading about quantum physics since the 1980s, on and off. And even as far back as the 1980s, the people who studied quantum physics were saying the best way to explain what they were seeing was an independent, omniscient observer. In other words, the reason stuff's not there until you look at it is because an independent, intelligent observer is waiting to see whether or not you observe something. It's pretty wild, but the idea of the independent, omniscient observer has been implicit in quantum physics from the beginning. It's, you know, Schrodinger believed in it in some sense. Heisenberg believed in it in some sense. They all believed the spiritual existed and helped explain what we saw in quantum physics. It's fascinating how that's treated like heresy now, even though the men who formulated all this would have thought this was not provocative thought. They had debates over it and different ideas, but they all thought something outside the universe was controlling things, or something bigger than we could understand was controlling things, and they thought quantum physics helped prove that. Well, fast forward now to just last year, Elon Musk, the billionaire, announces something, you know, that he's a supporter of what's now called the digital universe theory, which is a much more refined theory of how things operate. It's more than just believing in an independent observer. They've got a lot of math and a lot of tests suggesting that really the entire universe we're in, this whole world we're in, is like a video game simulation. Some of them strangely said, therefore that disproves religion, but that was a dumb thing to say, because what most serious religious people, even non-Christian religions people, have always believed that there's a reality beyond the physical reality we see, you know, beyond electromagnetics, beyond gravity. There's something beyond all that, and this theory confirms it. It's like we're all living in a Minecraft simulation. This theory is so strong that even Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's not all that great as a scientist, has said he thinks it's correct. Elon Musk, the billionaire, is now investing a ton of money in it, in partner with other unnamed billionaire capitalists. They don't want to be named, but he's publicly named. So them and the Bank of America, they're just investing huge money into investigating this because they think the theory is true, and they think they may be able to discover, you know, how to leave this universe or hack the universe. This is real. This isn't science fiction, and it's not a damn conspiracy theory. This is in contemporary news. This was in The Independent. This was in American mainstream news sources. You can go watch this interview. This guy's real, and you can go see who Elon Musk is. These people are investing billions of dollars in this theory that we're living in, that the physical universe we're in is a simulation and is not all there is. And I'm sorry, but that points directly to a great driving intelligent running things. Now, you may be able to dodge and say, well, it could be aliens or something, but that's just kicking the question down the field. The truth is, it proves that something outside the universe, or at least beyond the universe, is driving the universe, and it has to be intelligent. Does that lead you to Jesus? Heck no. But, you know, that's another conversation. It certainly proved that there's a God. Certainly evidence that there's a God. Evidence that there's a God in current science. For more to look at, you'll see on quantum physics, here's a video by Professor John Lennox. John Lennox is a mathematics and science professor, tenured and distinguished at Oxford, has worked with some of the world's biggest scientists, knows people like Stephen Hawking and Lawrence Krauss just fine. One of the things atheists, the ideological atheists, like to do is quote Lawrence Krauss as saying that something can come from nothing, and that quantum physics suggests that something comes out of nothing, or even that something comes out of nothing all the time. Nonsense. I personally have talked to multiple people who are experts in and work with quantum physics, and quantum physics in no way proves that something comes from nothing. John Lennox trashes that and trashes Lawrence Krauss in this video. What I'll also point out to you is this interview I did with Dr. Sarah Salviander, another ex-atheist, by the way, that we interviewed on the old Escaping Atheism channel. We may have to move those videos over to this Max Kolbe channel. But anyway, it's a great three-part interview. She was raised an atheist in Canada, indoctrinated as an atheist, eventually became not an atheist while studying science in her 20s, reasoning out that something intelligent had to be running the universe. Which, by the way, you atheists, it just astounds me that you always go with these sky fairy imaginary friend stuff, when the real question of God is something intelligent running things? In fact, again, I'm even going to say, the real question isn't how old is the universe, or what thing made the universe be here thousands of years ago, or billions of years ago, or however many, you know, what made it be here in the beginning. No. Why is it all still here now? Why is it all still here now? Excuse me, technical glitch. Why is all the universe still here now, and why is it still operating the way it's operating? What's making it go that way? Sarah came to the conclusion there had to be a God asking that question. She confirmed it for me. And she also confirmed, and she has publicly accused Lawrence Krauss, her fellow astrophysicist, of abuse of language. She's, you know, in claiming that you can get something from nothing. And she should tell you the same thing that Professor John Lennox did. Atheists who claim that quantum physics says something comes from nothing are making it, are full of it. They're abusing the scientific language. They're warping it. No, they can't. They're making that up. Now, it's about time we get started wrapping this up, but I will also mention a couple of the other old interviews that are on the old Escaping Atheism project you should check out. This guy wanted to stay anonymous, but he is a molecular biologist, a reasonably distinguished one who works with the Freedom from Atheism Foundation. Freedom from Atheism is a very large Facebook group with lots and lots of people in it and lots of admins. We are friends with them. We are not them, but we are friends with them and have fun with them and support each other. He was another one. He was never an atheist, but he was more or less an agnostic, unbeliever, uninterested. And he too, molecular biologist, while studying science and working with the science, came to conclude that there had to be a God. And once again, would agree that God is not the magic God of the gaps that the atheists believe in. God is not what you invoke to explain the unexplained in science. No, God is the thing running the laws of probability and physics. The ultimate intelligence running the laws of physics, running the laws of math and probability. God is that. And therefore, conflict with science, almost impossible. Another one I've mentioned, we've had him on a few times, former atheist Sy Garte. Go look up Sy Garte, listen to this fun interview we had with him. Links are in the low bar. Also indoctrinated hardcore as an atheist. Also eventually came to conclude, while working as a student and scientist, that the more he looked at it, the more intelligible, logical, orderly the universe seemed to him, the more it seemed something intelligence must ultimately be driving all that and making it happen, which is what a lot of us who are into science finally conclude. That nothing in material science can prove or disprove science, because material science only works because of the laws of physics and probability that God made and continues to make happen. That's the final thing I'll keep mentioning. And continues to make happen. Just like in the digital physics theory, just like in the issue in cosmology with the cosmological constant, something's making it all keep going this way and not just randomly explode into total chaos. This all people call God, said Thomas Aquinas. Finally, I'm going to mention one other thing that's worth looking at, even on the subject of evolution. I find most atheists complete bullies because they throw creationism at Christians at the drop of a hat, as if creationism is the scariest thing in the world. Honestly, it's not. I do get a little annoyed with creationists, especially the ones who are hardcore and suggest you're not really a Christian or you don't really understand the Bible or whatever if you're not a creationist. But I'm simply not a creationist, except in the broad sense. I believe in the classical sense. God is running the universe. God is in a state of, is constantly, the universe is in a constant state of creation around us. It's constantly being made and we're participating in that. I'm a creationist in that sense. I don't have to have a specific reading of the book of Genesis to work out that I have to work through. God, the Bible tells how to go to heaven. It doesn't say how the heavens go. It's not what it's there for. It's not a science book. But even there, and that's what I want to finally close with. Atheists even lie about evolutionary biology. And that really bothers me, because I'm not against evolutionary biology, and I'm not saying creationists are wrong about everything. They can't be wrong about everything. But I mean, when you phrase everything as atheist versus creationist, you miss so much. So even if you want to get an appreciation of evolutionary biology, the atheists are getting in your way, not in this case necessarily because they're atheists, but because they've become so hardcore what they call neo-Darwinists. And neo-Darwinism is the view that evolution happens through random mutation and natural selection and survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest, natural selection, random mutation, that is how evolution works. It is not how evolution works. In fact, that's pretty much the selfish gene theory. And while the selfish gene theory was very controversial and sexy and attractive back in the 70s when Richard Dawkins first published it, subsequently selfish gene has been shown time and time again to not be science at all, and that evolution cannot be explained. What we see in natural science, what we see in evolution, cannot be explained by random mutation and natural selection. One of the best evolutionary biologists in the world to first start saying that was Lynn Margulis. That's why I have this page up here. Lynn Margulis was not a Christian. She was not religious. She was, clearly if you read her, she was very much a scientific naturalist. She was snotty about Christians and Christianity, especially Catholics. She was pretty darn much a materialist. Someone once asked her what happens when you die, And she said the little bit of mold on the corner of your mouth eventually just takes over and kind of eats you. She had a view of life that was not at all theistic, but she was also one of the world's most respected evolutionary biologists. And not only was she a member of the American National Academy of Sciences, the same one I just mentioned where they had that phony survey saying they all had to be atheists. Yeah, the same PNAS. She was a member of the American National Academy of Sciences. And also, a very rare distinction, was also simultaneous a member of the Russian Academy of Sciences. And by the way, working as a biologist, she said she found Russians easier to work with and more and less dogmatic because they were not neo-Darwinists. They didn't believe this, and still don't really believe this idea that evolution happens primarily by, random mutation, natural selection, survival of the fittest. She doesn't believe it works that way. You look her up, her work is extraordinary. This is her page on Amazon.com. If you want something easy and accessible that goes into her explanation of the way evolution actually works, which is much more symbiotic, much more communication oriented, and not always necessarily cooperative, but frequently cooperative, but certainly symbiotic. And that happens all throughout your own body, as well as throughout the rest of nature. Dazzle Gradually is a good look at it from a layman's perspective. If you want to get much deeper and you want to get into the microbiology and even some of the molecular biology, look at books more like Acquiring Genomes or even Kingdoms and Domains, which is all solid evolutionary theory that stands in contrast to the way evolution is taught now. And I think I bring her up not because she was in any way religious, but because she helps to show that the creationist versus evolutionist debates are just a ringer. They're a waste of time. There are so many interesting ideas out there, even in natural sciences, that atheists often just pull you away from by sticking with one's theory and saying this theory is science and everything else is not. They're very dogmatic. A good one to look at, by the way, is this thing on voicesfromoxford.org. This was in 2012, about 5 years ago, shortly before Lynn Margulis died. She did this amazing interview in front of their evolutionary biology and other scientific peers at Oxford, and she completely trashed Richard Dawkins as an evolutionary biologist. Not in any way from a religious perspective, just showing time and time again how selfish gene is garbage. She was kind of catty at one point, and she said she liked selfish gene, and she said it does account for some few things that we should see in evolution, because it can. And then she goes on with this massive production showing how almost all of life completely fails to follow selfish gene principles, which is not proof for God or not God in any way, but it's proof that you cannot trust ideological atheists like Dawkins. He's not even all that credible as an evolutionary biologist. His main claim to fame is as an evolutionary biologist. By the way, look up the term mimetic virus and mimetic theory in general. This was Richard Dawkins' old theory that religion is a delusion that spreads as an idea virus in the mind, that it infects you. And for decades, they started trying to find any proof to it, and they couldn't. It was based on selfish gene, and it was pseudoscientific garbage. Richard Dawkins has done nothing useful, just so you know, in evolutionary biology or biology generally in many decades, longer than most of you listening to this have been alive. The last time he did anything meaningfully helpful in science was probably the early 80s at most. He's nothing but an agent provocateur who misrepresents even evolutionary biology. Okay, so I'm going to repeat again. Atheists, they always lie about science. And here we have seen how atheists lie about science generally, how most scientists are not atheists, and most of the most respected scientists in the world are not atheists. It's either scientists generally or the elite scientists. Either way, atheists are a minority. Even in places like China, where atheism is practically mandatory, they're not. Multiple theories current in science came about not despite but because of Christian belief, as we see in cases like Georges LeMaitre, Isaac Newton, and so many others. Within contemporary science, we definitely have evidence for God. Sorry, but we do. As we said in Atheists Always Line #1 and #2, the evidence both from near-death experience scientific research and neurobiology research affirms that it's rational to think that you have a soul and that life exists beyond the physical plane for us. As we look at things like cosmology and things like the Big Bang and the cosmological constants, we see evidence the universe was created and is still being operated by something intelligent. Countless physicists find this entirely rational. Elon Musk, on the other hand, on the quantum physics level, people like Elon Musk and the Bank of America and other really influential billionaires are sinking billions into the idea that we're living in a simulated universe, that there's a reality beyond this reality that's bigger. Once again, this is proof there's a God. This is proof there's something beyond this universe. It is. You may think of other explanations that you think it might help prove, but this is evidence for a God. This is evidence for a soul. This is evidence that reality beyond the laws of physics, beyond electromagnetics, beyond current quantum physics, that reality exists, and that we are in a universe being run by something intelligent. This all people call God. And if you want to hear some neat interviews with some really smart scientists who used to be atheists, who while studying science concluded there had to be a God, go to the Escaping Atheism channel, check out interviews with Sarah Salviander, Sy Garte, the biochemist from the Freedom from Atheism Foundation, and keep checking this out because we've had impromptu talks with other scientists like Todd Lewis from Praise of Folly's father, who is a quite distinguished physicist. I know physicists and people in other sciences all the time who believe in God, and their belief in God is not irrelevant. It is relevant to their scientific worldview. All right, everybody, we'll see you soon. Thanks for coming by. Please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe. Please give us your financial assistance if you can, and God bless everybody.